Okay, well, thank you. Looks like we've got a full panel here, and we're not going to do full introductions. All of their bios and names are in the program booklet. And this session is basically just talking about aviation and what we can do to combat human trafficking in it. And we brought our partners here to talk about what they're doing. To get us kicked off, I'm going to pass it over to Scott with the Houston Airport System. I know Houston Houston Airports is actually the first partner with Blue Lightning Initiative. Once you partnered with us, so many other airports have followed suit, and it's been incredible, the progress that we've made. I know you have a PowerPoint that you'd like to share, but a lot of the folks here, they know training, they know public awareness. We want to learn what else you're doing and some of the stuff Houston is bringing to the region. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. First, I'd like to just quickly thank Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, and the Chamber for allowing us to participate in this event. Great speakers already so far, so I really look forward to the rest of the day. Briefly, Houston Airports, pre-COVID, has about 50 million customers coming into both of our major airports, Bush and Hobby Airport. We have a huge catchment for customers, so the very first thing, as Michael mentioned, we were very proud of being the first airport to initiate an MOU with the agencies, and we really take it to heart that we need to take it to continue setting trends. So we're doing everything we can to stay at the forefront. Next thing, basically one of the part of the MOU is training. So we have over 28,000 people trained in about 2.5 years. We have a very simple way to do that, and that's through our badging system. If you're an employee at the airport, no matter what entity, you have to have a badge. So we use the DHS video, and that's really impactful. Beyond that, our 1,200 employees are also required to do WBT additionally, so sometimes they're trained twice a year. The next thing that we've done is we coordinated with DHS on their creation of a video specific to the airports, which was very helpful. We really like to see that because the first thing we started doing was using their initial video for transportation. It didn't hit the airport specific. So, Michael, thank you for your team for doing that. Very helpful. We have over 320 DH awareness posters throughout our restrooms in the 2 airports that are commercial. Another thing we're doing now, we have Miss Lena Thompson in the audience who's 24/7, and we just thank you, Lena. I want to give her a shout out. We are with her now, placing little QR codes that she has to her company, and we're placing them at the bottom of the posters for people to also have additional information in multiple languages, gives explanations on laws and additional reporting. So thank you. We're looking forward to that.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay. Additionally, we have over 90 visual paging locations throughout the 2 airports that give the flight information, and we have continuous posters rotating on those as well. And lastly, in partnership with AAA and ACI, we are conducting and participating in multiple awareness sessions throughout the airport and aviation conferences. Recognizing that we need to expand beyond what we've done, last year we decided to have 2 events that would go out to the public and the private sector to not only spread awareness, but also garner interest and make sure that we are able to eventually be able to give back to the community. First one we did in May, we had a program at Bush, and we had about 450 people attend it. We had a representative from DH attend it, and multiple entities and VIPs throughout the CBP, DHS, FBI, and then the important part, at United Airlines and several of our local businesses that actually work at the airport participate in this. It was a great event. We had about 68 million potential reaches on the social media perspective and local media. So great event on that one. And we did that just to dip our toes into the water to see how it worked. We wanted to get some lessons learned. So after that, we started another event in November. And this event, we actually were trying to reach more. We did get a little bit more people involved, but the important part about this, we expanded it to the southern part of Houston, over 16 cities, including the the mayor from Houston, We had additional, Miss Washington, she's not here. Oh, she attended, so thank you for coming. Gave us a lot of additional coverage. We also had multiple congressmen, Sylvester Turner, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, and we had a survivor that spoke about this, and I've got a video here in a second. I'd like to play that if that's next. If they could play the video, please.
Every single day, women, men, children, both boys and girls, are targeted and groomed by traffickers who want to profit off the forced work done by victims who are often trafficked, unfortunately, through airports.
There are over 55 million people who pass through our airport system annually. That makes our airports a critical part in raising awareness through the many communication touchpoints available.
In line with the City of Houston's zero tolerance policy, Houston Airports is committed to fighting human trafficking.
I'm a survivor of sex trafficking. I would be flown out of Houston Intercontinental Airport. I would be flown out on a Friday, returned on a Sunday, and sitting in my seat at Taylor Ray Elementary Monday morning. So as an adult, looking back on my victimization, I try to imagine that 10-year-old child walking through an airport. She had just been repeatedly raped and photographed. And I can tell you one thing. Nobody in the airport saw me. Nobody in the school saw me. Nobody in the child welfare system saw me. But it's events like today that are going to make the difference, to teach our community about what they should look for. Because it is only through awareness, identification, and restorative services for victims that we can begin to heal from sex trafficking trauma.
The Houston Airport System launched an anti-human trafficking campaign designed to raise awareness and change public perception. And we're the first airport system in the country to launch the Blue Lightning Initiative, a public outreach campaign.
We stand with the victims, and we assist in the detection and reporting of all suspected human trafficking activities. It's through these pivotal relationships and partnerships that we are going to stop this disturbing and violent crime from happening in our own backyard.
It was really impactful, as you can tell. A quick shout out to NOV, that was one of the private companies that partnered with us. They're the one who created an actual walkthrough exhibit. Really well received, and it was really hits home to everything we were out here about. So finally, some basic best practices. I'll just go over a couple things real quick. Number one is a top-down approach. We obviously have the mayor of Houston, and it trickles down, so we don't have the support, we can't make anything happen. Secondly, each event took about 6 months to plan. We wanted to make sure that we hit it off correctly. But the most important part is we maintain relationships with all of the public-private partnerships, and those relationships really helped us take this to the next level. We'll talk a little bit later about what our next steps are. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Scott. I think it was interesting about what you had done was it wasn't just the airport. You had gotten all these external stakeholders involved. You had NGOs, you had congressional leaders, the mayor, local, state, federal, all coming together, and I think that's amazing. Sometimes airports, they get siloed. They think, oh, I can only make an impact in the airport, but it's not true. You extended beyond the airport, so I thank you for that, really do. And going back to what Shamir had said before, I feel the same way when I go to airports and I see signage. It just makes me feel so happy. And if anyone here goes to travel to any Houston airport, it's very evident that they're involved with this. Every single screen has Blue Campaign, Human Trafficking Awareness, National Hotline. You go into the bathrooms, you'll see it. And I think we're getting to a point where every single airport will be like that across the entire nation. And I know others are doing it too, but maybe we can give a round of applause there. So I'd like to jump we're going to jump around here in this panel. We're going to go to Skiffington. Delta has long been a leader in the airline community when it comes to combating human trafficking. You are also one of the first Blue Lightning Initiative partners. Can you speak to that journey and where you're at now?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here today. This is a wonderful event, putting a spotlight on an issue that is a dark issue, but it's important that we take a look at it. So one of the things that really that I really appreciated that Scott said was this initiative really needs to be from the top down to be successful. And at Delta, we have been blessed that our CEO in 2011 really decided to jump into this with both feet. And it's really been helpful to us as an organization as we look to combat human trafficking. So Ed Bastian, our CEO, has led multiple roundtables with other CEOs, usually folks in the Atlanta area, to try and put a spotlight on the issue. And that really has trickled down throughout the entire organization. Just last week, one of our senior vice presidents, Allison Osband, held a town hall. There were several hundred employees there in person, but we've had over 3,000 people watch the town hall in the last week already, where she brought in some of our nonprofit partners, as well as I was going to say survivor of human trafficking, but you had a liberator. She brought in a liberator of human trafficking, really to speak to our employees and talk and give her personal experiences. So it really is something that we care about at a very core and personal level at Delta. As Mike mentioned, I won't talk about the education efforts that we do with our employees, but I will speak a little bit about how we really try to interface with our customers. We have done, in the past, in January, in Human Trafficking Month, we've done PSAs on our flights. This month we partnered with Polaris, and they had a selection of human trafficking videos that we've put in our in-flight entertainment systems. So we are really trying to expand beyond Delta in what we're doing. Another area where I would like to just be complimentary is to everybody at DOT and DHS. You really are an amazing partner in this space, and you make it very easy for us to get information, to report to you what we're seeing. We're very excited to see what the new center does, the Center on Combating Human Trafficking, and we look forward to partnering with you in that space. All of you know all of the amazing work that they do, so I won't spend too much time on that. But the last two areas where we focus is with our partnerships across the country. We really try to find local houses at our main hubs across the country, and we encourage, not only do we provide financial support, but we encourage our employees to spend time volunteering there. We just did a company-wide volunteering day while the town hall was going on. We were tying blankets in Atlanta, Salt Lake, Minneapolis, our hubs, Los Angeles, that were to be donated to local houses that support liberators of human trafficking. In addition to providing financial support, we also have a program where we allow our customers to donate Sky Miles, which we match on a mile per mile basis. Through this program, we have helped relocate over 360 survivors of human trafficking. And I just found out last week, I had no idea we did this, but we have also used those miles to provide hotels for defense teams who are defending victims of human trafficking or who are trying to get people's records expunged so they're able to move on with their lives, find employment, and really try and thrive. The last thing that we do, and I just did this yesterday, is we have lobbying efforts at the state level and then also at the federal level. Yesterday we had a fly-in where we brought in employees from all across the country. I walked over 5 miles back and forth on the Capitol doing Hill visits. We met with members of Congress and to talk about their plans for legislation this Congress in human trafficking. The issue that I think we're really trying to focus on this year, we're still putting together our strategy, but we really do want to focus on how we can help support victims and support them as they start a new life without a criminal record. We really want to make sure that if there are, thank you. We really want to make sure that as victims come out of these experiences, that they're able to move forward with their lives in a way that doesn't have a legal record that really prevents them from growing and liberating. So really quickly, those are some of the issues or some of the ways that Delta is working on this event.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, incredible. 300 victims/survivors assisted with those flights, and all the extra stuff that you did is very impactful. Do you have any insight or recommendations for maybe an airline that's smaller and doesn't have all the resources as Delta on what they could be doing?
Yeah, I really would say just lean into the issue. I know that we at Delta are lucky to have a security team that really helps support all of our employees. We encourage them when they see something, say something, and then we have a security team that's able to help back them up. But I would say take our security team aside. We have an internal reporting system, and we have hundreds of reports of suspected incidents of human trafficking every year. Across the years, we have had one instance where a passenger who was wrongly suspected of human trafficking has actually sought legal action against our Delta and the employee. And so I think for the vast majority of cases, our customers are relatively understanding. This is an issue that we as a company have said we will support our employees, and so far it really hasn't. The financial downside, I would say, for us has been de minimis at best. So for a smaller airline, I would say just lean into it because there really is no downside.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It leads us perfectly into our next speaker here, Katura. We talk about leaning into it, being passionate about this issue, and I think flight attendants are some of the most passionate people in the world, especially on this topic. And I keep on saying first BLI partner. I think Association of Flight Attendants was also one of the very, very early partners in getting involved in this. Can you talk about the association and what feedback are you getting from members? Has there been any pushback or what's the progress been like?
Yes, thank you. First off, so I'm Katura Johnson, the International Vice President for the Association of Flight Attendants. I'm very happy to be here among like-minded individuals who want to stop this heinous crime. And thank you to the Light there for speaking. That was incredible. So thank you for that this morning. I think for you to say pushback is hard because flight attendants are the ones who sought out and wanted to make a change. And then in 2014, let me get my dates correct, is when 2016 is when AFA led the charge to make human trafficking requirements for all the airlines, for all flight attendants. And then we worked together to make this a reality for cabin crew around the world. And that happened with ICAO in 2018, where they published guidelines for training cabin crew on identifying and responding to trafficking in persons. Flight attendants are aviation's first responders. They're very passionate about their work that they do. I'm sure a lot of people have seen news segments on flight attendants who have identified things in the air and have spoke out and stepped up. It's great now that training is in place for more than 100,000 flight attendants. Sarah crafted the campaign 100,000 Eyes in the Skies, but I think it's really important to know that all of us when we travel can also be eyes in the skies. I think of that show, What Would You Do, right? And people are put in very interesting positions, but the thing with that, it's just a show and you can stop. But this is our everyday life, and so we have to make sure that we are stepping out and saying something if something is not right. So in regards to pushback, no, I think we're all together in that. And we also partner with the Communication Workers of America, who represent ground personnel and fleet service as well. And training is everywhere now. And like the Light says, I'm happy when I shut the bathroom door and I see the QR codes to scan and to give information. So we fight every day against human trafficking. We will continue to do so, and we're proud to be partnering with everyone. And we look forward to the work that we can do collectively together. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next up we have Mr. Bidwell with the ACI. And obviously your organization represents a lot of the airports. Can you speak to your organization and some of the work that's been going on?
Absolutely, and just like to take this opportunity to, on behalf of Airports Council International North America, thank Department of Transportation, Department of Homeland Security, and also the U.S. Chamber for holding an event on this critically important topic. And as you mentioned, Michael, ACINA has been leading the charge over the years and has really done a lot to raise awareness and provide resources to our member airports on human trafficking. And I was thinking back in preparation for this, and I want to say, if memory serves, it was like 2016 in Houston, where we had a conference, and Nicole from DOT was there and spoke on this. We've had other representatives, senior representatives from the U.S. government, including DOT, Customs and Border Protection, also representatives from human trafficking organizations, A21, and there's another group, International Human Trafficking Institute. But really, as a result of our efforts, and it was very interesting to see after the presentations and the Q&A, airport representatives flocked up to the DOT representatives and the other speakers in an effort to get additional information. But following that, many of our members launched individual programs. And it's been encouraging to see the work that they have done and to hear from the lady who spoke earlier about the resources that airports are putting in place, because that's the message that we're getting back from our member airports. So as an organization, we are a signatory to the Pledge of Transportation Leaders Against Human Trafficking. You know, and I just want to highlight some of the work that our member airports have done to really raise awareness about this important issue and also provide resources. So partnering with DHS on Blue Lightning is but one. Signing the pledge, many airports have signed the pledge. I went on and did a word search, and I found airport listed, and you know, one is ours, so we can take that off, but 166 times airports are listed, and that does not necessarily include the port authorities who might have signed the pledge. So posting signage in different locations, and not just in public areas, but in back offices at airports as well, to raise awareness. One of the other things that I thought was very interesting, and we heard this feedback from a number of airports, is they are now requiring every individual to be trained on human trafficking before they are issued a badge. And you have to have a badge to work in an airport. So this is compulsory now at a number of airports. Some have issued Blue Lightning lanyards to all badge holders. And coordination at the local level, as we've heard, is such an important aspect of this. And whether it's coordination with local law enforcement, you know, state and local partners, you know, all the partners throughout the airport, airlines, concessionaires, and others to raise awareness. And then also translating the signage into different languages. So it's not just signs in English. And then posting Stop Human Trafficking graphics throughout terminals. And then one of the things that one of our airports mentioned is they had an experience where they noted that they posted signage in certain locations, and in certain instances, unfortunately, it was being destroyed. So they reprinted the signage in acrylic and posted it again, and that helped prevent the signs from either being torn down or walking off. Yep. But really, just wanted to highlight the work of our member airports, and you know, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, like you had said, the airports are a critical part of this. And going back to what Scott was saying earlier, is like we had a training, it was geared towards the flight attendants. didn't really have any scenarios specific to airport ground workers, and then we updated it. And in the process of updating it, we realized that it's not just the flight attendant that could see something, it's all the badge holders. It's the ticket counter agent, the janitor, the cleaner, the customer service rep, even folks in the public just walking through. So we try and make that training available to everyone, and we encourage all the airports to do that, to train all your badge holders. We make it as easy as possible. You had mentioned the lanyard cards. Everyone has these on your desk. We could ship these out for free nationwide. We're going to get into that later in the later presentation, but just wanted to talk about that. And then this also might be touched upon later, but the Human Trafficking Prevention Act of 2022 just passed late December. And so we talk about bathroom signage. That is going to be, it is a federal requirement now. That'll be implemented soon. So soon we'll be seeing that everywhere, and that acrylic is a good best practice there, so thank you. Going to jump ahead into our next speaker here, Melanie. Thank you for coming here from Florida, actually. This is a topic that is not always focused on when talked about human trafficking, but it's important. Sometimes in our presentations we hear from people that human trafficking maybe isn't as big of a problem in rural or remote areas where there's not as many people. As a smaller air carrier, how have Cape Air staff received the training, and what would your message be to folks that maybe think it's not as big of an issue in those smaller areas?
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today on behalf of Cape Air. It's a pleasure to be here and to contribute to this very important topic. I'm sure everyone's familiar with my friend at Delta over here. You may not be as familiar with Cape Air and our size operation. Yes, the show Wings from the 80s did use our airplanes to film their introductory scenes, but the company's really evolved in the past 25, 30 years, and we are serving a large number of metropolitan cities that are connected with remote and rural areas. So as prior speakers touched on, remote and rural areas are just as critical because human trafficking can happen in any geographic location. Rural and remote areas have oftentimes higher rates of poverty, less employment opportunities, and higher rates of drug use. It's even more challenging when those communities don't even recognize that this problem really exists. Being from a very remote rural area myself, I'm from New Hampshire, and when I say remote, I mean playing in bear dens and wading through pollywog ponds in the summer remote. I'm very familiar with the mindset that this could never happen in my town. We live in the safest place in the world, and everyone in a small town knows each other. And if you believe that your home is safe from crime, it's going to make it even easier to miss signs of human trafficking. It's an even scarier when you know everyone and you recognize, if you recognize that this could exist, to begin with, that those would-be traffickers could be someone you know and trust, your own family, a local public official, or your neighbor. The BLI training's been very well received at Cape Air. Since we got on board with Michael and the team, we have rolled out the training. It's required of all of our passenger-facing personnel, crew members, and airport services agents out in the front line. And we are now working to extend it as an additional annual requirement for our city ticket office agents and all central reservations personnel as well. As a regional carrier, we have unique challenges, though, when it comes to assessing traveler behavior. We look at our customers through a different paradigm. Some of the indicators that are presented in the training are actually common travel behavior for our customer base, at least to some degree. The communities that we serve slide up and down the socioeconomic scale, and many of our routes are DOT essential air service routes, so the per flight ticket price is a set amount. It can be $39 or $49. We also serve a high number of vacation destinations, so last minute travel is very, very common. We also operate in cities where ticket purchases by cash can be the norm, because in those communities, having a credit card is very rare. We have a lot of experienced travelers who are young adults and teens who frequently travel on us alone to and from family homes and through large metropolitan cities. So we're used to seeing youth on their own and with their face buried in their phone or their iPad or whatever they're into. We also, because of serving those remote and rural areas, we have a lot of very inexperienced travelers who have never traveled by air at all. So exhibiting uncomfortable, awkward, or anxious behavior can also be quite common. When traveling on Cape Air, though, our company, because of the size of our operation being 9-seat passenger aircraft fleet types, we have multiple touch points with our passengers throughout the passenger's journey. Unlike the rest of the industry, where a passenger could have minimal interaction with an airline employee at all, our passengers are well connected with the employee throughout that journey. For example, with a larger airline, oftentimes the ticket is bought online, you check in online, you go through security, you scan your boarding pass, you take your seat, you don't ever have to talk to anyone. With Cape Air, tickets are often purchased over the phone through central reservations at our local city ticket offices, which are positioned throughout those remote and rural, maybe too much coffee or not enough, I don't know which one it is, remote and rural communities that we serve. And the passenger group is always escorted directly to the aircraft by a ground services agent, and the in-flight briefing is directly from the flight crew. So we are a part of that experience along with the passenger throughout their journey. We might have more challenges when it comes to assessing traveler behavior, but because of that intimate experience, we also have more opportunities. Even before the training was available in an official format, we had a number of instances where our people just followed their basic gut instinct, had a traveler where they felt that something was just quite off, and were brave enough to come forward and say something so that we could let our government partners, our law enforcement officials, look into it and do their job. And at least in one instance, we did successfully prevent a young individual from running away from home to meet someone she had met online, and who knows where that could have led, which is a scary thought. So like I said, as the Blue Lightning training has been very well received with our company. We're continuously working to promote the initiative through awareness campaigns to make sure all of our people at all of our cities understand that it is a very real threat. Having the opportunity to participate in virtual training and awareness events, as well as like the one that you were just in person for at Logan Airport, Mike, is tremendously helpful to continuing to get the message out there. As Skivington said, it does start at the top, and Cape Air is all in on promoting this initiative. We have the full support from our senior team, especially our CEO, to the front line, and we absolutely encourage you to get involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you hit the nail on the head there with the indicators. Each indicator is not proof that the trafficking is occurring, and of course, in children on their phones is not uncommon. You know, even myself, I find myself glued to my phone sometimes. So, what you said about the gut feeling is important, because your employees are the ones who are out there every day, who are interacting with passengers. How many folks are on those flights on average? I think you had said 9. 9. So that's a small group. You're going to have a conversation there. Maybe it's their first time flying. Maybe they're glued to their phone. Maybe they look a little awkward. But then maybe you ask them a question and they don't know who they're meeting with once they land. That's a huge red flag right there. And all it takes is one report to make a difference in someone's life. And that I think that's amazing what you had done with the potential runaway. Because like you had said, maybe it wasn't human trafficking at that point, but it could have turned into it. There's also vulnerabilities that are present in small regional airports. In addition to not as many staff on the planes, there's also not as much staff at the physical airports at those locations, right? It might just be a security officer, and they can just head on out off the plane. And we have confirmed cases in the past of our lived experience experts saying that they were traveling through general aviation and small air carriers with their trafficker, and also by themselves. So it's an important thing to note that it's not just the big airlines that we can look out for this. It's also small airlines. It's also at the fixed base operators and the small regional airports that probably don't even think about human trafficking when they're doing their operations. So now I'd just like to open it up to the panel. If there's anything else anyone else would like to add, and also if there are any questions too, feel free to throw your hand up and ask any of us.
Could I add one more thing to ours?
Go ahead.
Could I advance this again?
Sure.
If it works?
Yep.
I forgot to mention that on one of these slides, hopefully it's the next one. Yeah, on the far right side, just yesterday, we actually, after our second event, first event we broke even, second event we made some money, so we were able to give it to 3 local advocacy groups in Houston yesterday. You can see the mayor there, our Chief External Affairs Officer, our Director of Airports, and then Dead Center's David with NOV, who also runs Red M, which is a local group. So our next steps are going to be getting money back to the community. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And I saw we had 2 questions in the back. I think there's a mic that we're running over there.
Well, while we're working that out, there is one thing that I would like to recommend to all the members of the chamber that they can do, and that is one of the things that we've found that's very fulfilling for us. Reach out to local nonprofits and try and establish an apprenticeship where you're able to bring somebody who is trying to exit the life and really try and establish a solid footing for their future, and try and establish a program where you can help train them, help teach them life skills, and set them on a path for full employment. That is something that we've done at Delta, and it's been very fulfilling for us. And any of the members of the chamber is able to do that. So that's one last thing that I'd recommend that I'd forgotten.
Thank you.
Good morning. Well, I stand up. I'm not that tall, but that's fine. My name is Valeria. I work with the FAA in the Office of International Affairs, and my region is the Western Hemisphere, and I work with the Caribbean the most and South America. My question is, since my background is international relations, I see that we have a lot of domestic initiative, and that's fantastic. And I know we have ACI here in the house, which is great. But is there any initiative of doing all of this also, but across the borders? So not only within the United States, but what can we do to expand through other countries, especially the countries in my region? They're low-income countries, and they don't have all this money that they can spend, or all the money or the funding to create these initiatives to counter human trafficking. So I don't know if any of the airlines or ACI, is there anything that we're doing in the airports to also help combat human trafficking abroad? That's it.
So ACI represents airports, the owners and operators of airports in Canada and the United States, and our Canadian airport members are part of an initiative up there, which I think it's got a great slogan, quite honestly, and their slogan is "Not in my city," and that gets back to one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Michael, about in terms of challenges, right? And there are different slogans that we have at different locations, and that is something that airports in the United States have identified as a potential challenge. So we're working to identify some consistency and maybe a message that will serve to help raise awareness and also recognition at the same time. But specifically to your question, yes, airports outside the U.S. are taking the initiative, such as Canada. I think that, in terms of getting the word out even further to other regions, maybe less developed, shall we say, regions, identifying those best practices and then providing that information. I will say also that our world organization, ACI World, is disseminating information out to all of the members around the globe on human trafficking.
Sure.
As part of the Houston Airport System, I'm also a member of ACI and AAAE. We have an annual conference called Conference of the Americas. Last year we held it in Miami, and Ms. Thompson attended that as well and spoke. Thank you again. And this annual one will be in Puerto Rico next time, and we had obviously a session on anti-human trafficking. I'll commit to making sure we do it every year. And the reason we had it in Miami is kind of because of COVID, but normally it's down south. So we'll make sure we include that, and all the airports that attend often give us feedback on what they want to see, so we'll start including that.
Skippington, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Mike and DHS because they have recently reached out to international air carriers to encourage them to join the Blue Lightning program as well. And so Mike is leading the effort to answer your question on the airline front. As part of that initiative, we did reach out to our partners and connected them with DHS to help facilitate that. So we are encouraging all of our international partners to be a part of this fight as well.
Yeah, and I will just say that our U.S.-based partners have been our best advocates. Like Corinda had mentioned, we are now open to partnering with foreign airlines, so we can provide this training to them as well and help them. We've received a lot of support from the industry, and in addition to providing the training, one of the things that the Blue Campaign and I believe our colleagues at DOT also do is support the State Department International Visitor Leadership Program. So there'll be delegations that'll come from foreign countries that want to learn about how we do anti-human trafficking awareness in the U.S. And so we'll teach them best practices, what lessons learned, some of the things that Scott was talking about. One of the things that we always stress is including lived experience experts and survivors in the creation of awareness materials so that it's relevant, because it's going to look a little bit different in the U.S. versus foreign countries, although there are some similarities with indicators. And so the last thing I'll add on to this, because I could talk all day, obviously, but when we teach indicators in the U.S., it's for domestic and also international flights. So we have calls that come in. If it's an international flight, it can be looked into. We have Customs and Border Protection, Lisa here. If there's an outbound flight, CBP can, or inbound, CBP can pull the individual aside and do extra interviews and do an investigation and adjudicate. So there's stuff that we can do regardless of whether the trafficking activity is happening in the U.S. or abroad. Other questions?
Hello, my name's Delmas Whitaker. I'm with the Port of Seattle, and Melanie, I want you to know I was really kind of intrigued by your situation with being that smaller carrier. Is that I was hoping you can kind of elaborate on how you're helping to train your employees to build that muscle to be able to kind of not to avoid complacency based on the fact that you have so many of those indicators that are just part of your normal business. So if you could just one or two of those things we could take away. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Of course, we've rolled out the DHS training. They're all reviewing the video and the materials that are provided by the agency. We've been having a lot of employee awareness sessions, providing updates in our internal monthly newsletter. We've been hitting human trafficking about every other month to share something new. We want to put this in their face. We don't want them to forget about it and take this training only once a year. So we're really trying to, just first get our toes wet, but to keep putting it out there so that it has attention. I don't know if it's coincidental, but because we now are a part of the MOU, but I feel like every week I'm seeing a human trafficking story now. And it breaks my heart, but at the same time, I'm so pleased because that means it's got attention. It's got the attention of the media. People are talking about this. It's being recognized in a way that it was never recognized before. So I think just keeping the conversation going is just the best we've been able to do.
Just piggybacking on that, and by the way, Cape Air sounds like such a fun airline. Just the name.
Everybody wants to work for Cape Air, especially pilots. We need pilots.
You're gonna have fun if you fly on Cape Air. Just piggybacking off of that, in the transportation industry, I'm assuming we all, but we empower everybody to have safety moments where it doesn't matter if you're a mechanic, a pilot, a flight attendant, a gate agent. you can stop the organization in the name of safety. And so it's relatively easy to piggyback human trafficking on that, where if you see something, say something, and I feel like across the industry, employees feel like they're able to literally shut down a flight, and that, you know, providing opportunities to keep it fresh on people's mind, but then empowering them to have that sort of ability is something that is very important in the industry. So I'd say it's relatively easy to keep that on people's minds.
Empowerment is the perfect word, because whether it comes to accommodating a passenger who is delayed for some reason in or out of our control, we have always gotten the message out there in our training, in any subject area, that we will never fault you for doing what you think was the right thing to do. You have to be behind your employees and keep giving them that message that we're behind you. If you're leading with common sense and good instinct and heart, we will always stand behind you.
Great question and great answers. Just to add on, one of the things that we always stress when we do the trainings is we want to empower the staff, the flight attendants, the frontline workers. We're not asking them to do anything that's outside of their normal job duties. Normal job duties is customer service, you know, have a good conversation. If you see something that looks off, we're not asking them to be a vigilante or to be an investigator. That's what the law enforcement is for. And so all we're asking is that you make a report, and then it'll be looked into. So very good, thank you. And I think we had a question from Shamir or someone else. Okay.
Hi, thank you all for participating in the panel. It was really interesting. I'm Elise May from Southwest Airlines in flight safety. We have misidentified hundreds and hundreds of events, and unlike Delta, who only has one passenger suing them, we have a lot of passengers suing us. So a couple of challenges we have, and I was wondering if you all had any suggestions. One is we have a very broad reaction to when something is reported on the plane. In some of our airports, law enforcement does not meet the flight, so we have customer service representatives who's able to have a conversation with the passengers and usually rule out anything bad. It runs the gamut to other airports where we have FBI and all sorts of law enforcement people meeting the flight. So I think that's caused some of our problems. We even had an event where a teenager wasn't speaking to dad, and just it turned into this horrible situation. Well, the FBI met that flight, so dad wasn't really happy that his teenager was just kind of being bratty and caused all this. So there, again, just this huge broad reaction when we report this. So wondering if there's any opportunity to shore up with our partners in law enforcement to have more of a common reaction when meeting the flights. And I have a second one, but do you want me to pause so you can answer that?
So, if I may, with regard to law enforcement response, there have been some challenges with that. And the reason I say that is there have been a number of cases where law enforcement responds and then they're told, oh, we ran this up the flagpole and our corporate security department said we no longer need you. And that's a real disincentive for airport law enforcement to respond. And then keep in mind, they're resource challenged. And so in certain cases, they're responding to local events at the airport and can't always respond. You know, particularly with regard to masks, when that was such a challenge, you know, airports would call, or airport law enforcement would be called to respond to a mask incident, but there was nothing that they could do in accordance with local law. So I think that there's more discussion that needs to take place, and also establishing some threshold level for notification of airport law enforcement to respond to incidents.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that too. I can at least speak from a DHS perspective with some perspective here. I guess there is a difference between self-identifying victim and suspicions of human trafficking. So if you have a self-identifying victim, which is rare, but it does happen, it can happen, you want to make sure someone is there at the flight. Like you want to call 911, get the law enforcement responders there immediately, and help that person. If it's suspicions of human trafficking, you're not sure, but those indicators are there. There's ways to report if you report it to DHS, I'll speak to that. We're also going to touch on it at the event tomorrow. But if a tip comes in to DHS, our DHS tip line is not designed for 911 emergencies. It's designed for investigation. So if someone has a suspicion of human trafficking, they call DHS. It'll get sent to the local field office closest to where the plane is landing or where the airplane is destined. Concurrently, it'll get sent to our CBP National Targeting Center, and it'll also go to the DHS Center for Countering Human Trafficking and our federal air marshals. So before any encounter with that victim or trafficker is done, there's research that goes into it. There's a little bit of due diligence, and a lot of times, kind of similar to what Delta does, because they have that corporate security desk, is that they can figure out whether or not it is likely human trafficking or not before law enforcement even does that interview. So you avoid that whole situation altogether. It is something to consider when you're, depending on the nature of the tip. But like I said, this is probably true for most tips. About 90% of them don't turn out to be human trafficking, or maybe there's some other crime, but it doesn't mean that we don't want them. We'd rather have 100 than miss that one. So if it's just suspicions, I would recommend considering the DHS tip line. And we also work with local law enforcement and the federal air marshals so that if something were to happen where they would need that response, it can be coordinated. So far, we haven't had any instances like that with DHS tips to the tip line. Skiffington, do you want to add on to that at all?
I think you guys did a great job of summarizing the challenges in this space, because we do try and standardize how we react as well, and it is difficult, and it really, at the end of the day, no matter how many trainings, it's such an emotional experience that it does come down to the person who is reporting it, to the law enforcement who is responding, and it's very difficult to standardize this type of situation.
Okay, I have one more.
Sure.
Okay, one other challenge, again, just seeing if anyone has any suggestions. We don't have assigned seating on our aircraft, so if someone seems suspicious, we don't have the option of having the pilots call to get information. Oh no, they're a party of 5, they're a family, all of that. So we're at a little bit of a disadvantage there. But in the last couple of years, we've had a high majority of children being transported by government officials, being reunited with families. The government officials do not notify us ahead of time. So now we see individuals who aren't speaking aren't speaking to each other. The children are obviously nervous. They're being transported for a very challenging situation. And we have misidentified, again, hundreds of those. And just wondering if there would be any opportunity to work with those government officials to notify us, or maybe Southwest is the only one who's not getting notified. I'm not sure about that. Thanks.
That's a good question. We've also gotten tips like that before in the past through the DHS tip line. And through the investigation, they were able to find out that that was indeed someone who was being transported by a government official, and therefore they didn't need to meet the plane and do a investigation because they knew it wasn't human trafficking. So we can chat offline too and discuss that further.
Hi. I should stand too. I also want to, before I ask my question, I just want to encourage you that we should be looking at multiple indicators when we see these incidents, and not just relying on a single indicator, but try to have these multiple indicators to determine. I don't know the emotion that I'm feeling right now from this panel. I'm so informed, I'm so excited to hear all of your initiatives, because it gives me talking points to go back to survivors and say, hey, this is what's happening there, or in this location, or there. So thank you for all the work that you have been doing in your respective locations. I am really impressed with Delta. And when I say I'm really impressed, for years, in the survivor community, we have been talking about, why can't we get a human trafficking PSA in flight? And so when you said that, I am sorry for my outburst, but I am going back home now to send several emails did you know that this is happening? Because I am so impressed by that, because it's a conversation that has been happening over the years. So to hear that it's happening, ooh, I want to take off my shoes and run around this room, but I'm not in church, right? But I would like to know what has been the response from your passengers? Because in previous years, when we had this conversation, the response would be, well, we are afraid of what our passengers may think when we put out such PSA. And I would like to know what has been the response from your passengers towards the PSA? Are they saying, we're jumping ship, we're no longer going with Delta, I'm afraid? Like, what has been that response?
So I do have to say that when we did have the PSA in January a few years ago, I wasn't with Delta, so I am not particularly familiar with the response from our passengers. But I can say, just from this year, the videos that we've had online, I've had a number of friends and colleagues mention to me that they have watched the videos and that they found them very informative. So again, that's anecdotal evidence. I will definitely follow up with you when I have more information. I'm trying to figure out if we can determine how many times those videos have been watched this month. And so I know the month is still ongoing, but I'm trying to get that information, and I'd love to have a conversation with you following up on this. Thank you for your kind words.
Hello, Peter Lawton. I work for Travelers Aid. We have a lot of frontline volunteers and employees at airports. And the question is, I guess for Christopher, about if you're tracking any metrics about, you mentioned that several airports are including training in order to get badged. If ACI is tracking how prevalent that is, or if they plan to, and then if BLI and ACI, or because I understand that ACI collaborates on some of the training videos and provides them to airports. If they're, one of the holdbacks that I've heard when talking to airport officials about why they might not include it is because, one, it's extra paid time for a lot of employees, but also there's a language barrier for many of the people who are training. And so I guess the question is really about accessibility of those training videos and plans to promote them.
So we are not tracking specifically the number of airports that require the training of badge holders in order to get a badge. And we're not directly involved in the actual training aspect other than to provide resources to our member airports to include in the training that they deliver. In terms of your question about additional time that it may take to deliver training on this during what's called the security identification display area training for somebody who's getting an airport issued badge, that is something that in certain cases airports receive feedback from the airlines, because a majority of individuals that work at airports are not airport employees but airline employees or their authorized representatives. And in certain cases airports get feedback about the length of that training, and that may be a consideration.
Any other questions?
Hello, I'm Stephanie from Alaska Airlines. We have explored the idea of using technology such as facial recognition software to look at publicly available photos from missing persons databases to identify potential victims of human trafficking. I was wondering if any of you had experience using technology to combat human trafficking, and then also if there was any pushback from organizations such as the ACLU.
It's a good question.
I mean, that sounds like an interesting initiative, but the first thing that I thought of in listening to your question is privacy concerns that might be raised by certain groups, right? And the thing that I would reflect upon immediately is when the Transportation Security Administration, in coordination with Customs and Border Protection and certain airlines, have implemented biometrics at checkpoints and biometric boarding. CBP has biometric exit in certain locations. that was immediately met with, by certain groups, pushback from privacy. So I think that that would be a consideration. It sounds like an intriguing idea, but you know, the privacy aspect is something that would have to be worked out at the outset.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annie Sovic with Truckers Against Trafficking, and just want to echo the person behind me in saying I'm very impressed with Delta Airlines and the work that you're doing, and appreciated the recommendation that you had on apprenticeship programs for survivors, but also is very interested in the work that you're all doing on the government relations side connected to expungement and that piece of it. And I'm curious if you can just speak to that a little bit more, and where there are opportunities for kind of other corporations or other entities with government relations arms to get more involved in that, and if there are recommendations you have for a group like Truckers Against Trafficking to really try to kind of encourage our network to kind of use their influence to do more in that regard.
Yeah, I will quickly say, I think part of the reason why you two may be impressed with Delta is that we do really involve survivors in looking at our programs and plans. And so I don't think Delta can take all the credit, because we really try and listen to those who have experienced this. But thank you. In regards to our lobbying efforts, we have a human trafficking working group that we've established. It's, again, headed up by our SVP, Allison Osband. So very, very top-down leadership at Delta. And every year or every Congress, we take a look at legislation that is out there, and we work with members who are very into this space. So part of our meetings yesterday was meeting with members who are on the Anti-Human Trafficking Caucus, really to figure out what their priorities are for the year or for this Congress. And as those are being developed, we will work with our internal working group to really determine which ones we want to support and really lobby for on the Hill. It is, again, I think because it's such a top-down effort, you know, we work with DHS and DOT on a whole bunch of different issues, but this is really a labor of love for us, and it is for other airlines too. I know that we all work together on this issue with our trade association A4A as well. So right now we're kind of at the looking at what the Hill is doing, trying to identify how we can shape legislation. I know there's a bill by Senator Gillibrand that we're very interested in working with her on, making a few tweaks to it. I know Chris Smith from New Jersey is very, very passionate about this issue. We met with his staff yesterday to talk about how they are trying to work through this process. And it's going to take a lot of work this Congress, but we're very excited about how things are shaping up. And we do partner with other organizations that are and other industries. It's not just the aviation and travel space. There are a lot of different industries and companies that are very passionate about this, and when we can, we partner with them.
Okay, maybe one more question and then we'll wrap up.
Name is John Clark. I'm former Deputy Assistant Secretary at ICE. Now I'm with advisor to Next Solutions Group, and we're actually looking to use some of our security expertise to see if we can work with state and locals and help out on this initiative. But I'm curious, if you're all doing phenomenal work. In your respective areas, is there an elephant in the room that you find is a obstacle, a huge challenge that prevents you from doing as much as you'd like to do?
I could go first, maybe. One of the biggest challenges that I've experienced working on this issue is just data and the lack of it, and the lack of valuable data. I know our folks at Polaris have probably the best data available, but even that is just scratching the surface, in my opinion, on what the crime actually is. and then specifically the nexus to aviation. So if someone calls in, if a survivor calls in, or if someone calls in a tip, the first thing the hotline operator is going to ask is, what can I do to help you? It's not going to be, does your experience have a connection to bus, to airplanes, to, that's that's a secondary priority. So having the data would really help us, increase the program, provide justifications to do more. And that's one of the challenges that I would say. I don't know, anything else?
I echo it. First thing that came to my mind. Thank you.
Looks like we're all in concurrence. All right, well, just want to thank everyone for participating here, and going to move on to the next session. Thank you.